everyone. My name is Marina Psaros, and I'm Unity's Sustainability Lead. I am so excited to be here in this panel talking with three of my very favorite people in the gaming world. They are women leaders who are thinking about and acting on how we can create a more sustainable gaming universe. I am going to kick it off to get us started with a couple of quick introductions. Ladies, how about you tell us your name, affiliation, and an existentialist crisis, your favorite video game? Paula, I'm going to throw it to you first.
Of course, it's me first. My name is Paula Escuadra, she, her pronouns. I am a games researcher and the co-founder and co-chair for the Climate Special Interest Group of the International Game Developers Association. My favorite game currently is Abzu. I'm very obsessed with replaying that game over and over again.
Nice. Jude.
Hi everyone, great to be here. My name is Jude Ower and I'm the founder and CEO of PlayMob. And my favorite all-time game is, it's going to be Monument Valley. It's my go-to if I want to chill out, if I'm traveling, if I'm a little bit stressed, Monument Valley.
Nice. Trista.
Hi, my name is Trista Patterson. For 2 more days, I'm with Grid Arundel as their chief economist and senior analyst. I have also co-founded Playing for the Planet with Jude and others, and that led to the Playing for the Planet Alliance, which is an organization of 32 member companies that represent 1.5 billion players. So my favorite game is actually not a real video game on an actual platform, but it's the World Climate Simulation game by Climate Interactive. It's a game that allows people to imagine themselves in the decision makers of the room for all the climate commitments. And in my head, I've imagined it as a completely dynamic, interactive, immersive, fun, real world role-playing game that one day will happen.
Well, that seems amazing. We should definitely build that. So I wanted to start the conversation with just a little bit of context setting. At Unity, we're thinking about a really big thought. What would it mean to decarbonize the gaming industry? And so I wanted to just throw a really quick image up here to help people understand what that really, what that would mean, soup to nuts, a decarbonized industry. And so we've been thinking about everything along the spectrum, from how we have climate-friendly materials and manufacturing for the hardware that runs the games, to highly efficient game engines and game development practices, which Trista's going to talk a little bit more about. There would be carbon neutral distribution centers and physical delivery of games, which are still physical games like on a disk, not in the cloud. And then there would be energy efficient defaults that are set on gamers' devices. So your phone or your PS4 or your Xbox or whatever you're playing on. By default, those would be energy efficient. Esports and other events are also a really big part of the carbon footprint of games. And so thinking through how we would have those experiences in ways that are low waste and carbon neutral. COVID has kind of forced us into a virtual world, which is actually a lot easier, frankly, to control the carbon footprint if it's in a virtual space. So once the world exits from the pandemic, what will it look like? How will we do that piece of the gaming puzzle in a way that is sustainable? And extended hardware and software lifespans for components, everything from the devices that we play on, the headsets that we're in, and even how we store games in the cloud once they've reached the end of their life. And finally, there's a piece in the middle on this graphic, which is really looking at content. And I'd like to zoom in on that now, that we have a special consideration for content, because games are cultural drivers. They can teach us through education, they can empower us to advocacy, and there is a lot that can be done in that space, which is really what a lot of us on this call right now are working on. And I'd like to dig into that for a minute, starting with you, Paula.
So thank you very much, Marina. When we think about the power that games can have, it's it's a very interesting topic and something I think we're all really passionate about. Because games provide a really powerful medium for us to think about the futures that we can see and the futures that we can obtain. And they're deeply compelling emotional experiences, and they're very complex systems. And so when we think about the power that game developers can have, it's more powerful than we think. Like, often we run into the case that, we're just game developers. Like, what can we do to tackle the climate crisis? It's a big existential threat. There's actually a lot that we can do, not only in terms of enabling more sustainable business practices, reducing our carbon footprint. We're also providing opportunities for players to reimagine the futures that may actually be obtainable, because games are inherently lenses of the experiences that we create. And so when we think about ways in which we can engage in a theory of action and think about that change, the IGDA Climate SIG is thinking about ways in which we can establish an understanding of where players are at, and then thinking about the ways in which games can influence further thinking about, how we want the world to be, what are the challenges and problems that we're currently tackling, and what are the ways in which we can experiment and explore potential solutions. And so with the game design patterns work stream that our community is working on, and it's very grassroots driven. It's resources built for game developers by game developers who are also partnering with climate scientists, nonprofit practitioners, students, and professors. We're thinking about ways in which we can identify how we can use games as vehicles to engage players wherever they're at, be it just trying to create a sense of awareness about the climate crisis and the different topics that and downstream effects of this problem, all the way to inspiring individual action and collective action. And so when we're thinking about where players are at, everybody has a different mindset and expectation regarding how the climate crisis impacts them, what they can do about it within their means and context, and how to inspire others to create transformative change. And so the theory of action that we're working through right now will help us understand how games at specific moments can actually inspire a greater sense of awareness, meet players' needs meet the needs of players who are already aware and are ready to engage, but just don't know how. All the way to inspiring collective action to the point where it becomes an industry standard or a community expectation. And the hope is that if we can understand the behaviors that we're creating and the awareness that we're creating in a more systematic way, we can identify specific games that do that well, and then create best practices and design guidelines so that other developers can follow suit and not have to build things up from scratch every single time, because that is very taxing and very challenging when we have limited resources. The measurement around these efforts is really important. I'd love to toss it over to Jude and thinking about how the work that she's doing is enabling us to have a better understanding of player behavior and how this evolves over time.
That's great. Thank you very much, Paula. And yeah, just to kind of like summarize some of the data points. So it's really important in terms of like what you're saying in terms of how we evaluate and look at where the opportunities and gaps are as well, and how we can really kind of bring the industry together to make the biggest impact possible. And I'm a big data lover, and believe that data will give us the insights and knowledge that we need to help navigate and help provide insight to be used outside of the industry as well for making really valuable decisions. So I just want to show a short video clip now. It's just a 30-second video clip that summarizes some of the data that we did from a climate project through games, which I'm going to touch on later. But if we can show the clip now, that would be great. Yeah, so this video clip, it's based on Mission 1.5, which is a climate change initiative that we've been working on with the UN. And it was really to better understand how people feel about certain climate topics and to change policy essentially, so that world leaders would change a policy so that carbon emissions could be reduced, and we can slow down the warming of the planet. I'm going to touch on Mission 1.5 later on, but what I wanted to kind of highlight here was some of the data that we were seeing in terms of this is all through gaming. This is all through asking players about what they care about and being able to ask people across the world. I mean, the thing that gaming really gives us is that global reach. You know, we reach 40% of the global population. And if we can talk to people and better understand what they care about, or not that they don't care about something, what is indifferent to them, you know, what's up at their what's top of their priority list and what isn't that should be, you know, these are the gaps that we can start to fulfill through gaming, you know, whether it be through educating players, as Paula had touched on, whether it be about asking players to take action, and you know, collectively those small actions that we can take on a daily basis will make a big impact. I mean, some of the educational gaps that we found were things like, I mean, the things that people really cared about in the UK were water. You know, we're on an island and, you know, we're surrounded by water. So we do care about water, whereas the population in Iraq, not so much because they're landlocked, but there are other issues and other priorities that they've got versus what we have in the UK. So those cultural differences, I think, are really important when we think about educational content in gaming and who we're talking to and how we're talking to people, and being able to track if we're actually making real progress. You know, I think through gaming, it's not a one-way channel. It's an interactive channel that we need to be listening to each other. And then the way that we've also been using this data is, so I kind of touched on that we're using the data for world leaders to make big decisions. You know, we're asking global leaders to make policy decisions based on what people are saying through gaming. It's revolutionary, and it's kind of the first time that this is really happening. You know, usually we'd be, you know, going down to a polling station and taking our vote. But in some countries you can't do that. Some age brackets you can't do that. But through gaming, it's a completely equal playing field for us all to do this. And so it's going to be a really exciting year to see that the changes that could be made or will be made from government level, from world leader level on policies because of gamers speaking up. And so we're really interested in how you kind of take this information and give it to the people who can make big decisions. And this can be also with corporates as well at an operational and strategic level. You know, how can we help companies be better for people and the planet and change their strategies aligned with what people care about across the world, and then apply this operationally, you know, whether it be through product changes or marketing communication changes, because they're all part of the story as well. So gaming could be a way to educate, but also if we can then provide this data and information to organizations that people listen to as well, then it's almost kind of like we've got another bite at the cherry. You know, we've got another way to reach people, but through using the data that we collected through games. And I think, you know, this ongoing learning is really important outside of the games industry as well. So I think the non-gaming industry has been able to learn from gamers. You know, like I said, it's 40% of the global population. It's massive. So as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about what data can do in the games industry and outside. But also I know, Trista, that you've been looking a lot at the data side in a slightly different way, and you've been looking at data around energy consumption. So I'd love to hear a bit more about what you're finding out in that space.
Yeah, happy to comment on that. As you know, since the inception of the Playing for the Planet Alliance 3 years ago at the UN Climate Action Summit, there's been a lot of movement in the gaming industry, particularly from a lot of very large, very visible companies. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's many, many people operating behind the scenes to make that happen. Advocates at all levels of the companies, from the very, very bottom levels all the way up to the top, to make the change happen within those companies. And then there's all the independent developers, the ones that are inspiring the work, that are exciting other people and really making things move. And so after looking at all of the commitment letter, the decarbonization commitment letters to the Alliance, and all of the ways in which the companies are attempting to ratchet down their energy consumption and ratchet down their carbon emissions, one of the things that is really, I think, underutilized and undercapitalized is the engagement element, which is also why I'm so excited to be part of this panel, because everyone that's on this panel, including our fearless leader, is an expert in pulling the best out of the people around them. And that is so important because that's how the industry itself is going to decarbonize. This particular slide is not mine, it's Marina's, and it's part of one of those elements of sharing. So many companies have given me the privilege of looking under their data hood and helping them suss out places where there's stones yet unturned, major uncertainties, areas where people can apply their creative powers and operationalize them to do so much more. And it comes from, that kind of energy is really going to come from all areas of the company, not just one silo, not just from the very top or the CEO or the CFO or the environmental manager. It's every single person that understands that a commitment to climate is actually a commitment to the well-being of the whole company and a commitment to the well-being of every single gamer on the planet.
Okay, so here's where I'm going with all this. As I said before, I'm an economist, so I obviously think about return on investment. But I also think about other things like architecture. How do we gather all these good ideas and lock them in structurally so that we can make the most of them? We can leverage incentives and system momentum so that we can continually build on our successes and make them bigger and stronger. But the last thing that I reflect on often is the role, the really important creative role of disruption. And gaming is a disruptive industry. It's a marvelously generative, exciting, evocative place to think up new ideas. And one of the great barriers in decarbonizing the gaming industry is that we've locked all of ourselves into thinking traditional ways about problem solving, and also thinking about, oh, poor us, this is a really hard problem. What are we going to do? And we spend a lot of time wringing our hands about how we're going to come up with good solutions. The thing that's amazing about these meeting of the minds that I was talking about earlier, that all of these panel members are experts in, is that by bringing people together, we can begin to think much more about the experiences of others and let that energy remind us that, oh yeah, we don't have it as hard as somebody else might, or think about a totally new twist on a problem that allows us to see kind of a crack that reveals a whole new set of solutions that we never thought about. I'll tell you that every single parent of a toddler that's in a grocery store with a cell phone battery that's dying and just trying to entertain their kid while they get through the checkout line cares about how much their device is using energy in playing a game. This question about energy management and also the kind of climate impact that all of our energy habits and uses and structures and architectures and organizations are using are immensely important to creating the solutions that will also help the rest of the industry, the companies we work for, the organizations we are engaged with, and also those that live on this planet with us, whether they're gaming or not. And so that's where I think the energy from this is really lying. We can't touch all of them at once, but you know, it's one of those things where when we get together with great folks like everyone on this panel, I think we can really do a lot.
Thank you, Trista. That was amazing. I think it's a really interesting topic that you brought up a little while ago. I'm going to try and tie two threads together. You talked a lot about community and You also talked a lot about the challenges that certain segments of the gaming industry are facing, which I think a lot of people just have no idea about. So I'm really excited about working with you after this to maybe bring some of those stories about your experiences with those Africa workshops to a wider audience. And I'm also thinking about how the work that you're all doing, that we're all doing, actually can span across multiple communities and make it possible for more of these stories to be told and for more people to get aware and engaged in the kind of work that will be transformative to the industry. I wanted to see if either Jude or Paula have any thoughts about how community and the work that you do across different time zones and cultures is actually driving real world impact or sustainability outcomes within the gaming industry.
Yeah, no, I'd love to jump in. So do you mean kind of the impact in the industry or in general from the industry?
Either way, actually, you can take it either direction that seems right to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's just so much scope. I mean, the games industry and gaming is about community, and when you connect those communities together, you know, the power of that is phenomenal. And I think we're just like the very early days of actually, you know, unlocking the potential of what our community can do. And again, kind of, you know, thinking back to the data and how many people you can reach, and you know, those who haven't had a voice on some of these topics before and making decisions about climate change. You know, that's just scratching the surface of what's possible. And so I think the work that we've done so far, we've seen games publishers and games companies come together and networks come together to say this is a really smart way of getting people to speak up and take action. Just to kind of summarize, because I mentioned Mission 1.5 before, I mean, we're essentially taking playable adverts and rolling them out within existing ad space to reach gamers all over the world. And it's all mobile gaming, so we're not relying on you know, we may go into console gaming eventually, but we're looking at, you know, what's the most played type of game in the world in all corners of the planet to reach people and, you know, make sure that no one in the community is left out. But again, I think that's just kind of scratching the surface on what we could do, and that's about kind of players' voices and getting them to speak up, and then but having a way to take that information and provide it to organizations that can make real world change, and also kind of look at the trends. You know, what are the trends and the progress that we're seeing? What are the gaps? Where do we need to focus on in terms of education, or what are the things that we haven't really thought about that people want to speak up about, and then look at the behaviours and how they change over time as well, to make sure that we are actually making real progress when it comes to nudging and changing behaviour. So I think they're the areas that I think, you know, from the work that we've been doing on community, I think we're just scratching the surface. But I think we've seen such a strong interest from the industry to do more of that, and to be a channel for getting people to speak up on these topics that really matter. Sorry, Paula, I'll hand over to you to continue.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think community and community cares is the core to any of the work that we're able to do in this space. The climate crisis and so many, you know, social movements are big existential threats to our ability to continue making and playing the games that we love. And we've had the good fortune of meeting game developers, researchers, scientists, academics all over the world who are willing to come together and create resources with an intersectional lens. And this has not only provided a lot of inspiration for more game developers to come to the table with their own ideas, their own questions, and their own thoughts, but it's enabled a lot of interesting resources to come out of the woodwork that can meet developers and players where they're at. We've been able to partner with Ubisoft's Positive Play team, and a huge shout out to Arnav Fayol's game design toolkit that he debuted during the Green Game Jam as a mentor. There's also the Climate Games database that we're working on that has, I think, over 300 games that have climate messaging or climate implications. That has been developers from all over the world have been putting in their thoughts as to games that we should be taking a look at in our analyses. And there's also prototypes for how we can visualize these game design patterns and provide positive proof points or opportunities for improvement that other game developers can think of when they're trying to think about games and narratives that make sense for their sociocultural context. And overall, the peer support that we've been able to cultivate through community has been really, really important. Like at the very bare minimum, if we've accomplished nothing else, we've been able to cultivate a safe space where all of us can vent about how difficult this is. And that in itself has been really reassuring and freeing and enables us to be more creative about the solutions that we're thinking about.
I think that learning, sorry, I just want to just jump in quickly with about the Green Game Jam, because I think that learning is so crucial, isn't it? From learning from each other and learning what's working, what isn't working, and being able to improve. So the Green Game Jam was set up last year and kind of came out of the Playing for the Planet Alliance, and it's been run by the amazing Deb. So I can't take any credit for the work that she's done, but I mean, this year it was 27 game studios with a player base reach of 1 billion people. When you think about what that can do, it's phenomenal. But what I love about the jam is that it's not a kind of traditional jam where it's very, very short and a couple of days long. It was months long. And what I loved about this is it's almost kind of like the Green Game Accelerator, because there were experts coming in to teach the studios about these topics, and they were learning from each other, and there's regular calls, and it was it takes time to create good content. And so yeah, you can create something quick in a short amount of time, but this was really thinking about how can you bed in content, which the theme was around protecting and conserving our forests and oceans, and it's not a small topic to quickly learn about in a few days and try and implement something. It takes time, and a lot of this is just the content is just getting started and will continue. So yeah, but this will be a yearly thing that happens, and I think this is brilliant for bringing, like I said, 27 studios together with that collective reach, and it's getting bigger year on year. And these are big studios. You've got the likes of Supercell, you've got Tencent, you've got Ubisoft. Big names are involved. So if we can get more people involved and more learning about what's working, then that is a brilliant way to bring the community to a really focused moment together.
I think it's been incredibly inspirational to see the work of the UN's Playing for the Planet Alliance through the Green Game Jam, and also the work of the International Game Developers Association Climate SIG. And these themes of building community and being at the beginning of something really big, I love that was surfaced. And I think that in the time today, we've only been able to really bubble up a couple of the main themes. I'm excited about continuing these conversations in our community and more broadly on Discord and through the Game Jam. I want to say thank you very much for being here. This has been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to it continuing.